Do you consider yourself the luckiest collector in the hobby? Who do you think you are? I am. Hey there, today I have a comic book unboxing, and in this video I'm going to open up a very large order from Mile High Comics. And this was an order that I placed when they were having their 70% off code word. Chuck did a couple of these. One was for his birthday. Another was, I think, to help him pay for some taxes. But I love these substantial discounts at Mile High Comics because I am a regular customer and I typically purchase when the coupon is at least 60% or more. And I had seen a lot of 60 and 65% over the last year. And then I saw 70% and had to jump on this deal. So I want to get to the unboxing and show you the books that I picked up. If you stay to the end, I'll show you what I paid for these books and show you how they were very heavily discounted. And I want to wish everybody a happy St. Paddy's Day and just a friendly reminder that we're all very fortunate. We're all very lucky to have our friends, family surrounding us, that we can play around with comic books and other hobbies and just live life to the fullest. So I'm really appreciative of the opportunity to pick up comic books and talk about them and grade them and just have fun with the hobby as I have been since I was a kid. So here we go. Let's get this shipment open from Mile High Comics where I got 70% off their listed price. Okay, here it is. I got the big boy box from Mile High Comics. This was sent to me February 7th, 2025. And this was sent FedEx. I always choose FedEx when I'm checking out of Mile High Comics. You want to do that. It defaults to USPS. You can flip it to FedEx at no additional charge. I prefer that over USPS. Minimum order of $60 gets you free shipping. So I always try and make sure I unlock free shipping anytime I order from Mile High Comics. And I end up paying just a little bit to insure the order. This was a big order, so the insurance mattered. And let's get this opened up. Okay, here we go. One of the largest orders I've ever placed at Mile High Comics in terms of overall cost to me and the number of books. The total of 17 comics that I picked up from Mile High. And here we go. The first one is Tomb of Dracula, number 61. This is a regular staple of mine, no pun intended, not comic book staples, but I often pick up books from certain titles. Tomb of Dracula, Werewolf by Night, Marvel Team Up. For whatever reason, Mile High seems to have these, and those non-key issues, books in between the big books, they will often list for the same price consistently, so I just kind of match up their cost and the value here. Really cool magenta cover on this issue of Tomb 61 from 1977. Cover art by Gene Colan and Tom Palmer. And I do see a little bit of a crease here. Typically with Mile High, there's going to be some sort of defect, and you cross your fingers and hope that you're lucky enough to get pressable defects and not color breaks. And that's part of the randomness, is that they are quite inconsistent there. But a lot of times you can get what I would say a book that was, maybe a 9092 that has a couple of pressable defects, and then you're in luck. Here's one, Amazing Spider-Man 259 from 1984, Ron Frenz on cover art. And you have to remember, 7 issues ago at 252, we have the symbiote costume making its debut. And now we've got Spider-Man, the original, is back. We've got the origin of Mary Jane, Hobgoblin. There's great times in Amazing Spider-Man, and this looks to be in really great shape. A little bit of a stack increase, so all of these books would require a press of some kind. But this looks to be potentially a 9.8 candidate after it's all said and done. Next is Ghost Rider 62. This is another one of those titles I was talking about that I look for at Mile High Comics frequently. Cover by Bob Budiansky from 1981. Boy, this looks to be in tremendous shape as well. Corners are sharp. Spine looks intact, complete. Spine tick free. Another sharp corner down here. I could get these all day. Love that. And when I say I can get those all day, what I mean is I would love to receive them in that way all day from Mile High. It doesn't always work out, but when you see it, you kind of know it, that it was in the higher end of the Mint range, which I think for Mile High is 8.5 to 10.0 they list on their website. So hopefully we've got some 9.8 candidates going there. Another Tomb of Dracula book. This is Tomb 56, 1977. It's unfortunate the staples are really oddly placed right on top of the book. There's the first one, and there's the second one. So that's a little strange, but this is an example of maybe the lower end of the near mint range where we have a color break right there in the corner, color break right in the middle of the spine, right there, and then even a little bit of whitening down there in that corner. So this is where I would classify it around possibly maxing out at like a 9.2. Another fantastic Gene Colan and Tom Palmer comic. I remember I had unboxed this probably several years ago now, and I had noted that it was the, I think, first appearance or first mention of Harold H. Harold, and somebody in the comments went off saying that that's just a nobody character, and I just thought it was funny, so I always remember Harold H. Harold making his debut in Tomb 56. It's weird to me sometimes the things that I remember. Here we go, Werewolf by Night. Again, one of those titles that I frequently check out on Mile High. From 1976, cover by Pablo Marcos. And I see this is an example too of some pressable defects right there. Just a tiny finger bend and a little bit of an issue right there on the corner. But other than that, due to the miswrap, we have this black line here that is protected by the miswrap. This will probably keep it from getting a 9.8 right down here, this corner. It's probably borderline if CGC would let that go as quote-unquote manufacturing or just something that wouldn't be wear and tear as far as a human mishandling or reading the book. Really sharp all the way around. Great copy of Werewolf number 41. The next one is Transformers number 29. This is from 1987, the first appearance of the Scraplets and the Triple Changers. And as a kid, I'm watching the Transformers cartoon. I'm buying the toys, playing with the toys, and then to see these characters, these new elements of the Transformers universe show up in the comics, it just kind of extended the fun for me. This one on the top, very strange, has a ton of like wrinkling or something here. So again, I don't know. I hope it's not a tear. It does look like the top is torn a little bit right there. Hard to tell with the white cover, but there looks to be like a little bit of a tear there. So that's where this one would max out at an 8.5. It's a little dirty on the cover there, and there is at least one spine tick right there on the cover. So this one, there's winners and losers here. This one probably will end up being a loser, but I didn't pay very much for the book, and that's part of the whole transaction and the gamble is minimize the losses and hit big on the wins. Next is Thor, God of Thunder, number 13. This obviously is a photo variant featuring Chris Hemsworth as Thor. A lot of people love the photo variants. I think it's a lazy aspect of comic book creation. I get it. It's a variant, so who cares? It's also quite stylized here with the background, obviously the electricity coming off of Mjolnir. And what I love is this, it's very collectible, has a lot of value in a 9.8, so I'm happy to get it at a good price. From Mile High Comics, I'm just not a fan of the photo variants, so I'll typically try and get those graded in a 9.8 and see if I can go ahead and sell the slab. Next is Seduction of the Innocent 3D number 1. This is technically the off-season from the season, and the season I'm referring to is the fall, Halloween, that time of the year. It starts to cool off. People start to decorate for Halloween, and comic book collectors typically start to look at horror or horror-themed comic books, and so I like to stay away from buying those at that time, but this looks to be in tremendous shape as well. Love this. One of my favorite Dave Stevens. There is his signature right there, 1985. A tougher book to get in a 9.8 due to the background and just the overall structure of the book. You can see there is some spine splitting right there as we move towards the top. But what I have found is not just Mile High, but collectors will conservatively grade this book because that's typical up and down the spine. But as long as there aren't color breaks, you can still get a 9.8 on that one. So hopefully that's the case. King Kong number 1. This is from 1991. It's an adaptation, another Dave Stevens. cover, and this one has eluded me in a 9.8 as I try to collect as many Stevens books as I can. This is from Monster Comics, and sometimes just the way that these books are put together, it just lends itself to additional defects, and there is some stress along the spine and some non-color breaking ticks. It really looks pretty good here, but I can tell up close that right in here in particular, there's just some very small and gentle like wrinkling and stress along the spine that doesn't break color, and we'll have to see. The corner looks pretty good. I would kind of give it that default 9.2 grade sometimes from Mile High when I'm in the middle and kind of on the fence, but I keep picking it up from Mile High when they have it available, as I think it's a pretty good deal. Then here's a book like this, New Gods #6, and as I'm tracking books on Mile High Comics, there's kind of a middle ground where this is an expensive book, but it's not overly expensive and overly targeted, where Mile High has infused and inflated the price to the point where it just looks like they want to keep the book for some reason. It depends on the title. So Amazing Spider-Man, X-Men, a lot of the Star Wars books, the price is so outrageous that even with the discount, it's still too expensive. And then you have a book like this where you look at the price, the listed price, and it's like, who would ever pay that much for a copy of New Gods #6? But then with the discount and it bringing it down into maybe a range where you're right on the fence as far as making a decision on this book. This is New Gods by Jack Kirby, and it's a pre-1975, so classified by CGC as vintage, released in 1972. And these books, if you can hit in at least a 9.6, sometimes even a 9.4, you will be able to recoup your investment and then some. And just taking a quick look at the condition, this looks to be very impressive. And again, I love this because this is probably sat at Mile High Comics for years, and sometimes different graders handle books. Maybe grading standards change over time, but just look at this. There's no tears whatsoever, just nothing. No moisture damage, no rusty staples. I do see just the slightest of a spine tick right there, and then this would be potentially an issue right there on the staple. There is some stressing on the page. That's a borderline tear right there, but I would say that passes. So if I'm just looking at it, I'd have to take it out of the bag and board and inspect the back cover just to see. But even this in a 9.4 with the potential of possibly a 9.6, to me, I try to have some fun and pick up one book with a really large ceiling, even though it might cost me a little bit more to acquire that book. It's part of the fun, it's part of the risk. And then there's a book like this, Scarlet Witch #1, really straightforward, modern book, affordable, so that when you do receive it in condition like this, where the corner has a huge color breaking issue right there, so this probably maxes 9.4, has a stack increase, I'd probably grade it out as a 9. They don't do me any favors with these really cheap small backing boards, but I'll pick these up. It doesn't grade out. I'll move on from the book. But two examples kind of offsetting each other, that New Gods #6 and Scarlet Witch #1. Two different types of pickups, two different types of risk there. And we move on to the next book, Uncanny X-Men #167. A very lovely Paul Smith cover. I didn't realize when I was collecting and reading X-Men back in the day, I just feel like I didn't appreciate Paul Smith as much as he deserved. This is a very common issue of X-Men, easy to find, and where Mile High will inflate and boost the list price on a lot of big X-Men keys because it's arguably the most popular Marvel title, or in the top 5, top 10 of most popular Marvel titles. They price things accordingly because they know that's what people collect. These that are more common, sometimes these slip by and are in that more standard priced books. The books that they just kind of list for the same price regardless of the content, cover art, collectability, everything of that nature. This looks to have a pretty severe stack increase, so when that happens, I kind of default the book back to a 9.4 and then grade backwards off of that. I don't really see any color breaks on the spine. There's a couple of corner issues, just slight there and there, that I have to see if that would maybe prevent it from getting a 9.8, but even a 9.6 for the price I paid, I thought it was a pretty good deal, but this could be a 9.8 candidate once the stack increase comes out. And as I said, all these books are going to need to be pressed anyway. Another Transformers book, this is Transformers #2. And looking at the condition on this, same thing. There is a corner problem right there. That's going to be tough, because I was going to say, other than that, it looks to be almost 9.8 pre-screen worthy, the way that the whole book is put together. It's wrapped very well. The edges are nice and sharp. But the Transformers 1 through 4, that the limited series that ended up turning into a regular series, I took those everywhere. I just read them over and over, cover to cover. And Transformers number 1 is well known. It's well collected. It's the first appearance of the main Transformers, Autobots, and Decepticons. This one is fun because it's the second appearance of those. Second appearance of Optimus Prime, Megatron, Starscream. There they are on the cover. There's Bumblebee back there getting stepped on. A lot of fun and way more affordable and easier to find than Transformers 1 in that type of condition. Next is War is Hell number 3. I had to get a 20-cent cover in here. And this one is tough, as you can see. Just take a look at this cover for a second, and you can see this Bronze Age framed cover. No doubt this is something that would be just so difficult to get in high grade. A couple of color breaking ticks in there, and that's probably going to do it in as far as a 9.8 is concerned, and that's what I was shooting for. But just looking at it objectively from a structural standpoint, looks pretty good. Next is Daredevil 28. This is a book that I picked up from Mile High frequently. I can get it for almost cover price after the discount, and I've gotten this book graded before. It is the issue with which the Kingpin gets elected the mayor of New York City. If you're watching Daredevil Born Again, then this kind of makes sense and ties things together. It hasn't really taken off in value like I thought it would, and it is an example of the, I guess, first appearance of a storyline or a significant moment in a character's history or the title's history. And when they translate it to something else, whether it's a continuation of the story in comics, live action, etc., it doesn't always pan out. There's a lot of hype around it initially, but then when it actually happens, it's like, yeah, so he's elected mayor of New York, so what? Great turn of events in the comics, and then once it's translated to another medium, it just doesn't really take off as much as the hype helped boost the book originally. It's just kind of strange. But anyway, first appearance of that storyline, or Kingpin becoming the mayor of New York. And Daredevil Born Again, I'm really enjoying the new series and can't wait to see where it goes. Next is Detective Comics number 553, an excellent Batman face collectible. Got Klaus Janson on cover art. And this is the second appearance of the Black Mask. So just like the second appearance of those Transformers, second appearance of Black Mask, second appearances, unless it's of like the most famous character ever. Second appearances are always kind of a fun way to collect comics, collecting early appearances of characters, heroes and villains. And this too, you can kind of see why I picked it up in terms of trying to find this sort of book in high grade, in high condition, having a lot of potential here. It is slightly miswrapped, so we get a little bit of additional protection, and the book looks gorgeous. Up and down, no color breaks that I can see, possibly just some light color rubbing on the top. It's hard to tell right in there. But boy, this one, if this grades out, I'll be very, very happy. I have to be careful down here with this corner as the cover is folding over on the book. So, like I said, I'll get this one pressed as well, and we'll see how this one grades out. But really great book from 1985, the second appearance of Black Mask. And another book with a dark cover, as most of them are dark in content. Spawn 85, Greg Capullo on cover art. And this, like Scarlet Witch number 1, easier to find on Mile High Comics, very affordable, kind of a low risk, medium-ish reward. And there's definitely some problems down here on the book there that this would prevent it from getting a 9.8. So you just kind of take the good, the bad, and you move on. But there's a lot of good in this order. And with Mile High Comics, sometimes you have to buy in quantity to get the quality. And that's the strategy here, is to kind of go through all of these books, grade them out, and figure out which ones would grade out and which books I want to continue on in terms of investing my time and resources into, and other people's time and resources to get these books back from CGC. And for others, then some will go into my personal collection or I'll move on from Raw. But what I'd like to do now is show you what I paid for the books with that 70% discount so that you can kind of see what the prices end up being after discount, where it kind of falls into more of, I wouldn't say an affordable range, but definitely a range where you can make some decisions to move forward and acquire the book. So let me show you the order summary. Okay, here is the order summary for the comics that I ordered from Mile High Comics on February 5th, 2025. I was invoiced $333 for that stack of 17 comic books. You'll see here indicated with the 70% off coupon. And just very quickly, when you're looking at a book like Seduction of the Innocent 3D and you see it listed for $150, you can find that book online elsewhere in high grade for a lot less. But then when you look at the actual price that I paid, it's $45, but with the $12 of insurance, free shipping. But I do distribute that $12 across the 17 books. So it ends up costing me almost $1 more, roughly $45.71 to get the book. And then if you're thinking, could I get a Dave Stevens Seduction of the Innocent 3D for around $40 to $50 if it had the chance to be in that 9.4 to 9.8 range? Again, you're getting to that point where you're thinking about it, you're considering it. At 150, you're like, there's no way. And you could actually make that argument for many of the books. But I'll let you kind of look over the original price versus the actual while I move over and show you the total cost, where I sum all of the 17 books plus insurance, and then I compare it to the cover price fair market value of each book, where I have an actual positive of $87. And I think that's where typically you'll see me show you a negative raw value addition to my collection if I were to keep the books raw from Mile High. When I'm using like the 60% off code or even sometimes 65%. But then that additional 5% kind of pushes it over where I'm actually looking at a positive value addition. So you can see a book, just picking one randomly, Ghost Rider 62, total cost of $13.01. Cover price has that book at $17 in high grade. So roughly a $4 raw value add on that book, whereas if you take 10% off, obviously it's less, and it doesn't quite add up to more of a significant and interesting raw value addition. Now, if all of these books do grade out in near mint, which is 9.4 by definition, then we can see if any of these books have any value in a CGC 9.4. And many of them do. They're not really kind of eye-popping numbers, but still, if I were to send all of these books to CGC sight unseen, I could still roughly add $139 to my collection. Now, relatively speaking, that might not be worth my time or my trouble just to send all of these books in as a 9.4. Again, just using Seduction of the Innocent 3D as a benchmark here, $45 in a 9.4, that's just about what I paid for it raw. In a CGC 9.4, about $65. So if I were to send that book all the way through and it came back to me, it would be about a $4 loss or a break even. I'm better off just buying a CGC 9.4 outright in this case. Some of them are losses. Tomb of Dracula 61. This is something that's happened to me in the past where I'll acquire it for a certain amount. I'll get it pressed. I'll send it to CGC and it comes back in a 9.2 or a 9.4. And then I have to take my losses and move on. However, the fun part is, what if all of them were 9.8s? I don't believe that they are, but it's always fun to look at the high-end ceiling. And now we see some really eye-popping numbers, and I know one caught my eye, and that's New Gods number 6. I'm not suggesting that the copy I have is a 9.8, but what I love to see is the potential. And when I have books that have potential on my radar, they end up kind of floating to the top of my priority buy list. And you can see I spent $42.11 to acquire the book. In high grade, cover price has it as $63, so already a positive raw value addition. But then in a 9.8, $1,300. But then in a 9.8, $1,362. Almost a third of the potential CGC value add here if they're all 9.8s. $4,353 of potential value that I can add to my collection if these were 9.8s. And I'm just going to leave this here for a moment And again, the point is not necessarily to buy comics from Mile High and assume they'll be 9.8. The point is you want to have enough growth and enough of a ceiling and enough margin between the price that you paid, the CGC value at the grade for the price that you paid, in this case, 9.2 to 9.4, and then is there enough room for the book to grow? Daredevil 28 has no value in a CGC 9.4. It cost me $4.91, cheaper than most modern books, even at a new release discount from online stores or your LCS from a pull box. And yet in a 9.8, it's valued at $118. And I need the room and the growth because more often than not, I'm sending these books off for pressing. There's an additional fee there, and then obviously the fee to grade. And if it's a pre 1975 book, it's more expensive, and the pressers usually charge more as well. And so you need to have enough room so that this additional investment of time and money is worth it, because you have that gamble, that additional potential value. And this order really is a perfect example of a typical order, or what I at least try to do when I'm thinking about ordering. I can't always afford to place an order like this, but it's got a 20-cent cover. It has a much older book where I spent some significant money on, although $42 really not bad for a 1971 book with the potential of over $1,300. But in some cases, I'll spend somewhere between $50 and $100 to get a book like that, and try and do that maybe once per order or once every other order. And also targeting books that have a CGC value in a 9.8 minimum of $100, and many of these are $200 and $300. And all it really takes is hitting on a couple of those, and the order kind of pays for itself, which is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to have fun with the hobby. I'm trying to roll the dice, gamble a little bit, hopefully get lucky with a few of these books, but also target the comics that I know and love, that other people like to collect, because it's very important for me as I start to look at an exit strategy with my collection to make sure that I have books that other people like you and like me would want to collect, so that I'm not burdening anyone else with dealing with my collection. What do you think about these books that I picked up from Mile High? Is the 70% coupon still not enough for you? I understand completely. I still have a lot of fun. It's a great source for me to get some high grade books, some not so high grade books. It doesn't always work out, but it's part of the fun. I call it the condition mystery box. And I'll keep doing this and ordering from Mile High and sharing my experiences and showing you the books as they continue on their journey. Hopefully where you'll see these books in a future CGC unboxing. Thanks for watching. Happy collecting, and see you next time.